What if your home is in a trust? What is the tax basis of the beneficiary of the trust? It depends. So there's different types of trust, and the particular type of trust that you are utilizing will determine what the tax basis will be for the beneficiary of the trust. Most of the time in a lot of my videos, I'm talking about trusts that are created to avoid probate, not necessarily for asset protection or to reduce the taxable estate. Those particular types of trusts, known as living trust or revocable living trust, because they can be changed and they're created while you're alive. Those types of trusts which are set up solely for probate avoidance. If you have a trust like that, then the beneficiaries who ultimately end up inheriting any real property that are owned by the trust, they will enjoy that step up in basis, which means when they inherit the property, if they are going to turn around and sell the property in order to determine if there's been any gain realized in the sale, they get to use whatever the fair market value of the property was when the grantor, creator of the trust, passed away, and use that with whatever they're going to sell it for. So it's the difference between the two numbers. So the easiest way to look at this is if I inherit property today because a grantor of a trust passed away today, and today the value of that property is $600,000, and I turn around and sell it 4, 5, 6 months from now, the fair market value is most likely still going to be around $600 or $600,000. So if you look at the difference between $600,000 and $600,000, there is no difference, so there's no gain realized. Or even if it's sold for $612,000, these are very, very small numbers that we're talking about. So if it's in a revocable living trust, the basis that's going to be used to determine whether or not capital gains tax are owed upon the sale is going to be the fair market value of the property when the grantor of the trust passes away, or when that property essentially goes to the beneficiary because they are now inheriting the property. Other types of trust, essentially irrevocable trusts, which can be very, very helpful in a lot of circumstances. And I do kind of want to stress this point because capital gains tax is only one type of tax, and it's actually at a lower bracket than other types of taxation. So there's a huge difference between capital gains tax and if you do have a taxable estate, what you would actually be taxed on in that scenario. So just because there might be a tax, you have to look at the overall picture, right, in determining what you're doing. So in an irrevocable trust, which people will often transfer real property to that type of a trust if they do have a taxable estate. Currently, right now, Florida doesn't have inheritance tax, but according to the federal guidelines, if you're, as an individual, if your estate is greater than $16 million, it's going to be a taxable estate, or for a couple, $27.2 million. That's the current number. It is expected to change in 2026 and most likely will most likely be cut in half, but we'll see what happens in 2026. But if you have an estate of that size, it does make sense to look at options like irrevocable trusts, because for your assets that are being transferred outside of your exemption amount, you're going to be looking at a 40% tax rate on those assets, and the capital gains rate is much lower than that. So of course you have to weigh or consider all things, but as a general rule, if you are utilizing one of those types of trusts, an irrevocable trust, there is not going to be the step up in basis. You don't get a double gain from the IRS, I guess is the way to put it. They're not going to allow that. So whatever the value of the property was when you put it into the trust, it's going to remain at that value for whoever your beneficiary is. So if they turn around later and sell the property, if they can, according to the terms of the trust, then there could be some type of capital gains tax, but again, it might not be so bad, especially compared to what the inheritance tax would have been. So I hope this answers your question. If there's any other questions about houses that are being transferred through trust or ladybird deed, anything to do with estate planning, elder law, probate, asset protection in general, and you're in Florida, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. We're atCAUSE Law Office, the non-stuffy attorneys, and the link is in my bio.